Okay, I'd like to call the July meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Paula, would you call the roll?
Alan Brown.
Present.
Neela Crank-Clements. Suzanne Broadbent. Taylor Fudge. Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Klaus Ryman Phillip. Linda Schultz. Ann Zacharitz.
Present.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. I'd like to go over the procedure for the meeting. It's on the back of the front page of the agenda. The chairman will announce each case and ask interested parties to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners will discuss details of the case, calling on staff for details. Following this discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of the parties present. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and sign in if you would, and to present their position as succinctly as possible. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines that circumstances have changed. Or 4, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. When an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. Contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Finally, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the Commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the BOA. Okay. Next, from the Office of the Historic Preservation.
I don't have anything to report this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. 3, acceptance of the minutes. Are there any comments on the minutes or a motion?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Second.
Been moved by Suzanne Broadbent and second by Ann Zacharitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. On to code enforcement report. Anybody from the city here?
So just a brief reminder, this is a report of any notices of violation or citations issued in historic preservation districts. If there is a number listed under citation number, then it has actually received a citation, not just a notice. And you can contact HP staff or the Action Center or Development Services staff for more information about those.
Okay. Any comments on that? No? All right. On to continuous announcements and requests. Looks like none.
No new requests.
Okay. Public hearings, 6.
1, C-18-78-129 at 2907 North Robinson Avenue, Jefferson Park, Ward 2, regarding the garage only. Receive Historic Preservation Commission comments on structures in the process of being declared dilapidated as initiated by the City of Oklahoma City Development Services Code Enforcement pertaining to properties that contribute to the historic integrity of the district, and 2, effective proposed demolition of structure on the historic character of the property and district. When we review dilapidated cases like this, when the city is declaring a structure to be dilapidated, we do not have the opportunity to issue a certificate of appropriateness, but we are asked to comment upon whether or not the structure is historic and whether it affects the character of the historic district. So this will be just providing a recommendation that will be forwarded to City Council.
Okay. Is the anybody from the city here would like to talk about this? Any comments from commissioners? Is the owner present? Excuse me? Oh, you're the owner. Would you like to say anything? Oh, here he comes.
Hello, my name is Nina Williams.
Address?
2907 North Robinson Avenue, Oklahoma City, 73103.
Okay.
I'm the daughter of Terry Eugene Williams, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say or whatever, because this is my first time coming here, but I was wanting to see if we were able to have time. We just got the letter last week.
Okay, we're just commenting on its historic significance. Maybe, you're from the city, code enforcement. Would you like to comment on how much time she has? If you could, is he from the city?
Yep. Mr. Hubble? Perhaps you can speak to the process beyond just what HP Commission reviews today.
At the microphone.
Speak into the microphone for us. Right there. Yep, thank you.
City, in the HP area, this is basically the first step. The building has been looked at as potentially being dilapidated, and it requires comments from this board before the city takes any further steps. After that, depending on what your comments are, it's returned back to our department. Our department will then re-notify on the dilapidated, and it'll be sent to City Council. City Council will basically hear the same arguments, information, that sort of thing. They'll make their determination as to whether it's going to be declared dilapidated or not. Once their decision is finalized, if they approve it to be dilapidated, then the owner of the property is re-notified that it has been declared dilapidated at an estimated cost of whatever the case may be. They do allow a certain amount of time, especially if we have owners that are in contact that say, look, I'd like to do this myself. Can you give me a little bit of time? Our chief inspector would talk to that person and say, let's talk about a game plan. How long do you need? What the city won't necessarily do is if you say, well, I'm going to get it done 2 years from now, that's not something we're going to work on, because the city looks at the safety aspects of said situation. And like this one in particular, the roof's caving in, the building is leaning. That's why we look at it, is because it's a safety issue, a safety factor. But we certainly do try to work with citizens as best we can as far as time frame and allowing them to do it themselves, because it could also save them money, because if we come in and do it, our fees plus administrative fees and stuff like that. So.
Okay, so it sounds like they need to get in touch with the city at some point.
Yeah.
So perhaps when we're done with this item, if you're able to stick around for a few minutes,
Sure.
you all could discuss out there
Yes.
kind of what your next steps are.
And
Okay.
I can point her certainly in the right direction so she knows who to speak to.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody have any more questions or want to make a motion one way or the other?
Well, I will move to forward the comments and the staff recommendation to the city council.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Suzanne Broadbent, seconded by Joe Meacham. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item. National Register nominations, none.
None this month.
Yep.
We have 3 items on the consent docket. Commissioners can pull an item if they'd like, or ask any questions if you have any.
Anybody would like to consider one separately? Or any comments, questions, or motion?
I'll move approval of the items on the consent docket case.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ann Zackeritz and seconded by Joe Meacham. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent docket is approved, and if you're on the consent docket, you can leave because you've been approved. Or stick around if you want to watch. Okay, next, D.
Hbca 19-2 at 104 Northwest 20th Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Phoebe Vaughan for Maryvon Redbud Restoration LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1 Demolished house elective. And the Commission has heard this case twice previously. The applicant has provided an additional engineer's report. And the Commission also had the opportunity to take a site visit and look at the structure in person prior to the previous hearing.
Okay, the applicant's present. Okay. All right. Okay,
Good
sir.
afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive.
Okay.
Here on behalf of the applicant, who is also here with us, and Tim Johnson. Mr. Johnson is an engineer that we hired after I was retained to come in and take a look at this property. I understand that this had been on your docket a couple times. In your staff report, there are a few engineering reports that you have. So when I got hired, I wanted to take a fresh look at it. I don't know the engineers that had previously worked on it. Mr. Johnson and I worked closely together on many types of applications. We had a demolition for a garage before this commission several months ago, in which he was also the engineer that produced a report that led to the approval. So what Mr. Johnson was tasked with doing is looking at the house, trying to determine a path forward for possible restoration as is, or if not, is it in such peril that demolition is the only way to alleviate the significant public harm that could result. So we did a thorough site inspection. I do want to point out that there are multiple staff reports. I think originally it recommended approval, then it recommended a continuance, I believe, to gather more information, and then we come here today before you with a recommendation for approval by your staff. So with that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Johnson. I hope you all have a copy of the report. It was rather thick. I'm sure Paula has it electronically as well, so he can walk you through his analysis, then answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates, 1 East Sheridan, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. As David mentioned, we were brought in when he was hired to come look at this house. My office, we have several building inspector people on staff. We've been doing house inspections for about 25 years. And so this is something we do on a regular basis. As part of our inspection of this, we included an outside inspection, exposure of the foundation, inside inspection. In this case, we had exposed underneath the house, so we got to look at the post and beam that's in place. We normally do a roof inspection, but the roof didn't look stable enough to get on. Plus, it was raining the day we were there, but you can see the sags, and there was a number of leaks inside the house. So hopefully you've read the report. I will also say that I respect Bob Zoll. He wrote a report. I didn't see it till after we'd done our report, but it's included in your packet. We basically came to the same conclusion. Just briefly, the critical parts of the house were the fact that there's no crawl space under the house. The foundation has settled, and in some cases, you can see in that picture, the ground and the topsoil is up into the wood of the siding of the house. The original foundation was made up of a low-strength concrete of some sort. If you poked it, it was loose. It could be scratched and reduced. The house needs to have a new foundation. And in order to do that, as one of the contractors mentioned in their review, was you'd have to raise the house to do that. We don't feel that the house is stable enough to lift. The post and beam underneath the house is damaged by termites. As mentioned, there were several places in the house that the floor had been open. All of the plaster on the walls had been taken down to the lath, with the exception of one of the back bedrooms, the southeast bedroom, which still had carpet and plaster on the walls. The house was riddled with animal waste and mold, and there was a lot of rotting wood around where the leak was at the fireplace. There's about a 4-inch drop from the living room towards the kitchen in the floor, where the east-west beam that held up that kitchen, the wall into the kitchen, has settled, and it's about 4-inch drop and about 4 feet. The kitchen floor had been completely removed and been covered back up with 2x6s and 2x8s, not the same depth of the flooring in the house. One of the critical things that we saw was because of the mold and because of the open walls, there was a concern on my part that this has been contaminated with black mold. So we called in 1-800-WATER damage. They came in and did air sampling testing, and was sent off to a lab, and those results are in the back of our report. The key thing to look at is the Aspergillus and penicillium group, baldospores groups, which are the more dangerous, and those are the ones that are rated high on this report that's attached. The back room that I mentioned that still had the carpet and plaster in it was 20,000 times higher than the base air outside. The people that came and did this work, they do water damage repair all over the city and the state. They had not seen a reading that high. And their recommendation with regard to how do we fix this, they said it would probably cost in excess of $50,000, and it would require the removal of all the lath and plaster down to the studs, and ventilation and chemical treatment to the black mold. Because of the termite damage, my concern was that the structure wouldn't hold up under that stress. The roof is weighted down and concaved. There were several rotted spots in the roof where the eaves were draining, causing further dry rot damage. So just in conclusion, I could go on and on and on, but in conclusion, I've only seen one house as bad as this in the time we've been looking at houses in 25 years, and it was a house that I was buying to tear down. So I just could not find a way to salvage this. You know, walking on the front porch, one of the boards broke loose under my weight, which is a lot of weight, but it's still just hazardous. So with that, the conclusion was that there was no salvaging, and it was, in my opinion, it's a public safety hazard today. I suffered with sinus reaction to the mold for about 3 days after being in there. So, and the guys that came with 1-800 water damage, they put on the full suits and the masks, and because they were going to be in there for an hour. So, do you have any questions of me?
We appreciate your sacrifice. Did you guys sign in also on our sheet? Yeah, if you would, please. So we've had 3 reputable engineers kind of saying the same thing about this, plus new information on the environmental. So,
I do want to mention real briefly,
okay.
I know that the commission deals from time to time with demolition, and the frustration is, you know, this concept of demolition by neglect. So I do think it's worth reiterating that that is not the case here. You know, this individual bought the house to renovate it. Unfortunately, she bought a house that the previous owners had let fall into disrepair. She's tried everything she can do. She's hired multiple professionals to analyze this thing. So it's not a demolition by neglect. It's an unfortunate position that we find ourselves in. She's tried everything she can to not, but I think when you have this many professionals weighing in with the same conclusion, I think that she's left with no other option than demolition.
Is there somebody from the neighborhood that would like to speak?
I have just one quick question. It sounds dangerous. So is there going to be special conditions made if the house is demolished? Because it sounds like that we could be spreading hazardous materials and then putting also hazardous materials. I don't know. Is there a permit when you have mold as far as removing it and how you would remove it, where you would put it and so forth?
I'm not sure if there's a permit, but there are companies that specialize in that. I live in Heritage Hills, and I had a bunch of water damage this summer with all the rain, and Blackman Mooring came out and had to remove just about everything in my basement. And when they do that, they take it to their facility, and they have specialized dumpsters where they deal with the debris from...
Would that be the case with the whole house? Because what I hear you saying is the entire house is contaminated and dangerous to the community right now. So it would seem like that we would need another step here before we go further. I would hate to give a demolition permit without knowing the plan for the demolition.
Yes, with regard to the demolition permit, the only thing that's regulated is disposal of asbestos. Black mold or any mold does not fall into that category. So whoever is contracted will have to pull a permit to demo it, and they'll have to abide by any regulations, therefore.
Okay, and there you are.
Can I just ask the city, is there a permit for removal of dangerous materials?
We would need to check with someone in the Development Center, the Development Services Center. There are some code provisions that talk about removal of various materials, but we'll have to check with them.
Okay.
Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th Street. I'm chair of the Design Review Committee for the Heritage Hills Neighborhood Association. You have our letter. We are opposed to the demolition. We do not think a demolition is appropriate in the historic district. We believe the house can be repaired. It is a very simple frame structure. I myself have repaired houses equally bad, in fact worse, where the roofs have actually caved in down to the crawl space. If you have the money, you can fix it. And I'm sure you can find somebody to fix it if you've got enough money. And economic considerations are not part of what we're looking at here. This is about historic preservation, not about what it costs. And I've spent $100,000 on an 800 square foot house, just like this, to put it back in shape after the roof is caved in. And I came before this commission, and you told me it didn't matter what it cost. It was a historic structure. And I only ask that the same law be applied to these people. I own 6 other houses on this block. Demolition of historic structures directly impacts my financial well-being. So if you want to talk about economics, that's the economics I'm facing. Our neighborhood exists today because of historic preservation. That is the only reason we exist. We would have been bulldozed 50 years ago if we did not have historic preservation and this commission to protect our future. This is a modest house. It's not a mansion, but modest houses also have a place in historic preservation. They provide affordable housing and diversity to neighborhoods so that we don't just preserve the mansions, we preserve everything. And that's what historic preservation is all about. And I'd encourage us to try and work through this. If the owner is unwilling to spend the money to fix this house, I would encourage her to sell it to somebody who will fix it. There is somebody out there who will spend the money to fix this house, regardless of the condition it's in. It's in the historic area, it's in Heritage Hills. There is potential for this property. But once it's torn down, it's gone. It's no longer a historic contributing structure.
Okay, thank you. Comments from Linda?
I would agree with the neighborhood on this, that probably over the past 40 years, maybe a preponderance of houses, maybe including my own, the city would reach the same conclusion. I could get an engineer who did the same, but yet these houses stand because of a commitment to not demolish them, to save them. That is a compact that the neighborhood makes with history. So I'm not going to be able to vote for a demolition of a bungalow that's really important, that's fairly simply built, when houses with similar challenges, probably much more complex, water in the basement, maybe mold, maybe not big enough closets, stand today with families in them and represent important milestones in the history of the city. It is not always easy to defend that when people want what they want, because I'm a people too. But we have an overarching mission, which commissions in the past have honored and defended, to preserve the historic integrity of these neighborhoods. So that's going to be my position on this demolition. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I briefly, the neighborhood representative asked that you uphold the law. So I think it's worth looking at what the ordinance says. The ordinance on standards for demolition says under 6 sub B, the structure poses an imminent threat to the public health or safety, and the demolition of said structure is required to alleviate said threat. Well, that is the exact conclusion that Mr. Johnson came to. If you read the entirety of the other engineering reports, they came to the same conclusion. And so, with all due respect to the neighborhood, you have the only technical data before you supports what the ordinance lays out for demolition. And so, without any other technical data to rebut that, the general belief that I've renovated a house, therefore this could be done, I'm not sure that is the appropriate standard by which this commission should be deciding these, when the law is fairly clear as to what is the standard that must be met to enable you to grant a demolition.
I believe if the law was fairly clear, it would be easy to make this decision. But I don't think the law is fairly clear. I think that Commissioner Schultz is correct, and I think President Ice is correct. I think that preservation is a unique circumstance where people spend more than they have good sense to keep neighborhoods like this intact. It's not economic. Historic preservation is, it can be, but preservation is something that comes from the heart, from people making sacrifices to spend more money than they would on other houses in other neighborhoods to be a part of a place that has meaning to them and to help preserve that meaning for their city and for the future of their city. So is it clear? Does the law, if that was the case, we'd be tearing down houses in historic districts for the last 50 years. This is 50 years, the 50th anniversary of the Historic Preservation Ordinance in Oklahoma City. And if we had that idea 50 years ago, we wouldn't have historic districts left. So it is unusual if it was other places, not districts, not, taken care of, and have guidelines like ours. Yes, it could happen. That's the whole point of the guidelines here in having historic districts.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the neighborhood as well, and I do think it's there are ways to preserve structures like this, and it's not rocket science, and I believe it can be done, so I agree with the other two commissioners who've spoken and with the neighborhood.
Okay.
I'd like to say just one thing. This one is a real struggle for me. We did a walkthrough on this house, and I walked through it, and to the naked eye, to me, it looks like it can be saved as well. But in my opinion, and while I respect everybody up here and respect the neighborhood and the homeowners' opinions, I think I would actually side with the homeowners in this particular instance, where I do think, based off the experts' reports that we've seen and the new information presented, that the property is, in fact, an imminent threat to public health and safety, based off the mold and all the other challenges that it has. So I guess I'm just letting everyone know where my vote would stand.
Ann?
I agree with the other commissioners and the neighborhood.
Okay. I think I know where this is going to go. Any comments from the owner representatives? Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion or more comments? Excuse me? Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Okay. I know there's some Heritage Hills folks here.
My name is Bill Carey. I'm president of the Hbca board, Heritage Hills, but I eat because I'm able to eat because I buy and sell houses and renovate them along the way. And I've been in this house, and yes, it is terrible. I wasn't sick for 3 days, but I survived it. But I'll draw a comparison to what I recently did at 311 Northwest 22nd Street. Larger than this house, but in far worse condition. And the foundation was collapsing. It had a blue tarp for a roof. There was nothing square in it. The floors were like Tim described these floors. But $100,000 later, it's a marvel of a house. It's the best house on the street. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And it's probably a $400,000 house. So it can be economic. The problem is that Heritage Hills East is small bungalows. It is now part of Heritage Hills. And what we're seeing is a lot of interest in these houses, not some to renovate, some to remodel, but also some to try to get rid of them. And with the speculation of going back with a larger house. I think you have an item for a new house on a vacant lot that you've been wrestling with for some time. And I think that's where the door we're starting to open with this. This house can be redone. I do it. I could do it. And I think what we're doing is opening the door for encroachment into the neighborhood with the objective of putting up larger homes, destroying the little bungalows, and that's something that we as a neighborhood are going to stand and fight. So I would appreciate your denial of this application. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bill, did you sign in too also, if you would, please? Thank you. All right, anybody else like to speak to this? Okay. The owner.
Thank you, Bill. And I did contact Bill about some of his providers because this is what my intention was to restore. And well, his major crew, and I don't anticipate, or expect him to handle my renovation, was out 6 to 8 months before they could even look at it. I did contact someone else that he recommended, gave them the lockbox code, and have texted 3 times. He will not respond. I have contacted 7 people out of the Heritage Hills newsletters, and out of that, 1 looked at it, and also it was just text, so I didn't admit it because it was kind of, cheesy. But he said he completely agreed with structural engineers. He wouldn't touch it. I've talked with 4 other building companies, won't touch it, and two framers won't touch it. So it's not as easy to find someone to do this. And like you all, I have done this. This would probably be my 18th project. And I thought I could just go in, like I've mentioned before, and handle this. But this is, yes, it's a 959 square foot house. I did get one person who has worked with Randy Ice, Central Construction. He gave me a bid for $300,000. I understand financial feasibility is not that important. If it was $100,000 for the roof, I'd drop it in a heartbeat. That didn't include mold remediation. So why I've lived in the neighborhood. This was not my intent. I love the neighborhood. Other ones I've restored, I would have never, and I would have been here probably fighting other people. But this is just more in depth than that. 350 easily on this size of a house. I'm not looking to go in and put in an Airbnb or something. Like I'd mentioned, this was for me to live in while I was here visiting my son. So I just want to say that because I'm not out to be a developer or something. So thank you.
Well, here's my problem. Once it's demolished, it is gone. And I just think that the neighborhood has a lot of resources, and they're pretty committed, and you're pretty committed. I think a little more discussion, more directed in a cooperative manner, might be helpful here. I would just like to see you work together on this before we come to a conclusion.
Okay, what's our options on this? We've continued it.
So this is the 3rd time that it's been heard, so we have to either approve or deny the application at this point. And then the applicant can reapply, or the applicant can appeal to Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
If we deny without prejudice, they definitely can reapply, or does...
They could turn around and apply tomorrow if it's denied without prejudice.
So you'd like to see the owner work more directly with the neighbor association?
Well, I think given the significance and the permanence of demolition, that it might be worth a bit more conversation. And if the owner can reapply, I know it costs $100, but I just think that it's worth trying. That's where I am.
Is that a possibility?
We'd like a vote today.
Vote today.
Thank
Up or
you.
down, okay. All right.
Well, you have to have a vote today.
Yeah.
We're on our third time.
So he's not, yeah, so we can't continue, I think, right? So it's going to be approved or denied. Question is it with the prejudice or without? If it's denied. Anybody like to make a motion?
Well, I don't object to it being without prejudice. I mean, I don't think anybody objects to a property owner having an opportunity to make another application. I mean, that's really what we want to happen. So
we're not talking about a continuance here, David, so, okay. All right.
Well, I will move to deny, get the number here, Hpca 19-0002 without prejudice.
Without, okay.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Suzanne Broadbent and seconded by Linda Schultz. All in favor?
Sorry, did we want to add findings to that
Yes.
motion before we,
Yep,
especially because the staff report has a different recommendation?
right.
We don't want.
All right, well, the house is historic and contributes to the integrity of the historic district.
Period.
I'm sorry,
I think it's all you need, right?
is that all yeah.
So is that amended? Do we need,
What?
is that amended, or, I mean, does my second still stand on that, or?
And I kind of think that we need to say that testimony from the neighborhood indicates that the house is salvageable. And the third thing would be demolition. Given the permanence and the permanent loss of demolition, we believe more information is needed.
May I ask a question? When you say that you're not purporting to say that the testimony of lay people establishes the fact that it's salvageable, right? You're just indicating that in the motion you want it to be clear that the testimony was that they believe it's salvageable.
I believe that's what I said.
Okay.
With the recommendation to work together on this. So Linda needs to accept that as an amendment.
I accept that and second the amended motion.
Okay. All right, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Nay, right. Actually, I should say that. Opposed? Nay. Okay, so the motion carries and the item is denied without prejudice.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hpca 19-18 at 2601 North Chartel, Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects for Zach Punnett, A to Z Properties, LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1 altar clipped gable end required. The Commission has seen this application a couple of times already. The last remaining item that had not been approved was the modification to the clipped gable over the porch. And we had continued that at the last meeting, hoping that we could get to an administrative approval prior to this meeting, but didn't quite get there. So this is in front of you again today.
Oh,
Hello, everyone.
state your name, please.
Oh, Holly Hunt with Sam Gresham Architects at 400 Northwest 23rd.
I'll just start out. We noticed that it's shown now in what appears to be its original condition, the gable. There's no detail, dimensions, or what is the gable going to be now? And
So in the meantime,
anything historical that shows what it used to look like?
So in the meantime, I've worked with Katie and Angela intermittently on this, and we did find a picture, an old county assessor website picture, showing the clipped gable and with the gable end that remains, so a trapezoid, if you will, that has a stucco interior with a wood trim surround. And I think that that's similar to what we have on the west side of the house. I provided Kitty with an image. I'm very sorry that that didn't get in prior to the staff report going out. I have it with me today. What do you think we should do on that, Katie?
I don't know that I recall seeing an additional image, sorry.
I think we'll need dimensions on what you propose to do, and also the elevation needs to be completed. This shows a trapezoid, doesn't show any trim or materials. But Katie could probably approve all that.
It is likely my fault that I let this kind of fall off and didn't get her the proper materials in time. So that's not on her, but I'm happy to work with staff. I mean, we want, at this point, I feel like that our original design option, which is what you see as he had begun, that's been denied. We are amenable to go back to the nearest historic reference we have. And in that picture, it shows that very thing that I'm passing around now. So as long as staff would approve that as something that was historically relevant, I think we'd be willing to get staff everything that they need to move forward.
I would be willing to approve if staff is willing to accept the documents.
Yeah, I think we can work with the applicant to make sure that we've got everything we need shown in the drawings. I hate to agree to that at the meeting, but I think we can, with the condition that we get everything in order.
Your new drawing kind of answers my question. Some dimensions would be good.
Right. Well, it took some research and digging to find an old picture of this house, but we were able to do so, and it's pretty interesting. Even those old iron columns that we've since demolished, we come to find out those were not original, so I'm very happy to find that out. We'll be getting closer to the original with this last little piece.
Amazing what research will turn out sometimes. Okay, have you seen those, Joe? Do you want to see that elevation?
I trust Katie.
Okay.
So
All right.
the original clipped gable is going to be restored to
Correct.
its original.
Correct. That is correct.
Was that the only point that you didn't agree administratively on, or? I'm trying to figure out where we are.
Yes, that was the last remaining item. There are several other things that were administratively approved. There were a couple of things that were approved with conditions at the last meeting, where we're a few things that are still hanging out there, like some doors, where we were going back and forth on getting the documentation for the doors. But this was the last item that the commission had not yet addressed.
Correct.
So you're saying that now you agree?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying now you agree with the staff that
I think they had already agreed to put it back.
We just didn't know what to put it back to. So now we've found some documentation of how the house used to look back in the 60s. We're going to restore it to that. And that's what you see today, which I got about 2 weeks ago. So it just didn't make it into the staff report in time.
Okay, any other comments? Looks like they've done what we requested. If not, is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve HPCA 19-00018, item 1, with the specific findings as noted by the staff in the staff report, and that the condition that the drawings accurately illustrating the reconstruction with the complete details be submitted to staff prior to release of the CA.
Second.
Okay, been moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes. Thank you. Next.
HPCA 19-48 at 1421 Northwest 38th Street, Putnam Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Chris Carr for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace fence and gate required.
Okay. D4, applicant present? No, we're on. Which one are we on? 3, sorry.
D3. Yes.
Sorry. I flipped past it for some reason. Okay. Hello?
Chris Carr. I live at 1421 Northwest 38th. And I'm asking to replace my fence in my backyard at over 6 foot because of, well, the very back, which is the north, and then the west side of the fence. Because of the no one was living in the house behind me, and so there were a lot of homeless people coming in and out of our backyard. So we did call the police several times. And on the other side, which is 1929, which is on the west side of me, that house was also vacant for at least 10 years, and we had the same problem with that. But I think what we need to talk about the most is the front part of the house, because we replaced it with from a chain link fence, which you could see from the road, the side of my house. Now that it's a privacy fence, it's blocking part of the windows to see from the street view. And I'm not sure how further I need to go back with the fence. It's not exactly to the front of the house, which is the porch. The fence that was replaced was chain link, and it was higher than 4 feet. It was probably 5 feet, but this fence is a 6-foot fence. Then I don't mind making it shorter, or, I'm just asking for a recommendation on what I need to put on the front.
So I'll just kind of quickly give an overview of what we would be able to administratively approve versus what's there. The rear portion of the fence is 8 feet tall. Is that right?
Yes.
So that we can administratively approve. That meets the guidelines. We brought everything to the commission just because it's all one fence, but that portion of it meets the guidelines and would be allowed. The fence at the front of the house, the portion that has the gate in it, meets the requirements for the setback. So it's already, that portion is back as far as it is required to be set back.
Okay.
But it is 2 feet taller than what's allowed. The guidelines require the fencing at the front portion and along the side to be no more than 6 feet. Then the portion that extends forward of the gate toward the street comes too far forward. That would need to be set back 40% of the length of the side of the house, which I'm sure we've got calculated here in the staff report, and I don't remember that number. But that would need to be no more than 6 feet high and set back the required setback. That is for staff to administratively approve the fence. Now, at times, the commission has identified unique circumstances to justify changes to what the guidelines require for fencing. So those are up for discussion. But that's what the guidelines say about what currently stands.
Okay.
We do have, a lot of it is privacy. My to-be husband has had several back surgeries, and we do have a hot tub back there for that reason. Of course, it's just so he doesn't have to go to physical therapy. And so we structured the whole back fence to be 8 foot tall for that purpose and for safety at the time whenever the houses were vacant.
What we would prefer is for you just to work directly with staff and be able to follow work out the guidelines, because they can approve that. Mm-hmm. I think that it's rare that we have an exception for height on the sides or the front.
Okay. So I can the wood fence is 6 foot high. So does it need to be lowered or just back toward the gate?
The portion on the side?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's 6 feet high can remain 6 feet high.
Okay.
It would just need to meet the setback requirement.
Okay.
So what is the purpose of the portion that goes in front of the gate that comes?
The 6 foot portion.
It comes in front of the gate into the front yard. It's not really.
That shows right there, that piece.
There's a piece that really, it doesn't connect to your neighbor's fence or anything. It's just this,
right there.
This part.
Yeah.
That part right there.
What is the purpose of that part?
That was where the chain link fence was.
Uh-huh.
So I just replaced the whole fence.
So, Katie, are you saying that portion would have to come down?
Back
for
to-
you to approve.
So any portion of that that's forward of that 40% setback mark would need to come down. And I'm not sure exactly how much of it is forward of that mark. We'd have to look at the site plan again and calculate that up.
I mean, it kind of appears that might have to come down.
Okay.
Really, I think if you're willing to just work with staff, we could just continue it.
Okay.
And then you all could, have you been able to sit down and discuss it?
We've talked a little bit since she did receive a notice of violation for the fence, so we've talked some about the process, but she did want to come before the commission first to see if there was anything that the commission would approve, if there were unique circumstances, that sort of thing.
I mean, I would make a motion to continue and then you all make an appointment and sit down with Katie and talk about it.
Okay.
Excuse me, is there somebody else who'd like to speak? Okay, there is. All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, David Pasnow, 1417 Northwest 38th Street.
Next door neighbor?
Just to the east.
East, okay.
The White House you know because it's been before you several times over the years. You might recall it was a duplex. They attempted to convert it to a single-family home and back to a duplex. We've got great neighbors there now. I think you have a letter from one of them in front of you supporting what Chris has done. I'd like to also voice my support. I think the fence looks fantastic. It is 8 feet. It looks great. Look at that gate, the detail and everything else. We've had problems with our neighbors over the years. She mentioned calling 911 on the neighbor behind her. I called 911 on the neighbor behind her. We've reported it to the Putnam Heights Preservation Agency. They've since renovated that house and it's a better situation. But to your point about having the 8-foot fence on the north wall administratively approved, and perhaps that would be fine, it's important that we have better fencing, particularly around our houses, because we are on the perimeter of Putnam Heights. Her neighbor's on 39th, my neighbor's on 39th. I've had vandalism to my garage where someone actually ripped off some of the panels, had someone what appears to urinate on the back of my garage, having jumped over the brick fence between me and 3901 North Classen. And we had a prowler at our back door. I take these issues very seriously, and I really hope that you approve the fence as is, because it's important. The style matches the style of other fences. And we also have neighbors across the street who have 8-foot fences. They may not have been approved, but they're there. Any questions?
Suzanne, you live in Putnam. What comments?
Well, I don't think the fence along the back at 8 foot is an issue. That's administratively approvable and doesn't sound as though there's any issue with that. And certainly I do understand the 39th Street issues. Heard enough about that over the years, and we know that Putnam Heights is this little 104 house island that very often is surrounded by some more challenged properties. I believe if you work with staff, you can get, it sounds as though you're willing to work with staff, and I think that's much better than our trying to pick things that are suitable, because our guidelines are pretty clear on fences. As Commissioner Meacham said, we just hardly ever deviate from those guidelines. And it seems to me what I know about the guidelines and what I think will happen with your fence, whenever those are followed, you will still have your 39th Street protection. Right. And as far as between you and the neighbor to the west, I mean, a 6-foot fence, an 8-foot fence, I'm not sure I see much difference there in terms of protection and privacy. The part that's coming out forward, I mean, if the guidelines allow it to go up to 40% of the setback, that's what they allow. I don't really like that part that juts forward, but if the guidelines allow it, I mean, it's not my taste that matters here. It's just following the guidelines that matters.
Are there unusual considerations in this end of?
No, other than 39th Street, which we're already addressing with allowing the 8-foot fence.
Right.
Even if you come up with a solution that that staff can't approve, but they feel like, would be worthwhile coming back to the commission, then that's going to be allowed too. It's not to say that we're, trying to get you to go back to staff and then just make it follow the guidelines, but maybe we could come up with a solution that staff felt like they could bring back to us next month, and everybody would be ready to, closer to approve something. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, if there are special conditions that haven't been brought before us that you and Katie think need, well, if you want to come back, it doesn't matter whether anybody agrees with you or not. You're certainly welcome to. I would want to correct one thing, because the house next to you is not supposed to be multifamily. And David, I hope you were, I didn't understand you correctly, because I thought you said it is now a duplex, and it should not be. Okay, good, because we were going to have to fight that battle again.
We have really good neighbors.
Okay, so someone like to continue this? Is that what I'm hearing?
So we can continue either to August 7th or to September 4th. If we continue to August 7th, we have a pretty quick turnaround to get everything straightened out and administratively approved before we have to start prepping to put it back on the commission's agenda.
Okay.
September 4th gives us a little more time if we think we can just work towards an administrative approval.
This is fairly simple, I would think.
August 4th is fine.
September 4th?
September 4th,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
September 4th.
Okay, is there a motion?
I make a motion to continue HPCA 19-00048 to the September 4th meeting.
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the item is continued. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next.
HPCA 19-63 at 312 Northwest 18th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Bill Gummerson Blake, for Charles Helm, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install brick and stone patio and backyard elective, 2, install outdoor fireplace and chimney in backyard elective, 3, install covered seating area with trellis elective, 4, construct fence to conceal AC units elective, 5, relocate iron gate elective, and 6, replace west fence elective.
Okay. Applicant is present.
Yeah, Roger White with Gummerson Blake, 4019 North Classen.
Okay.
Did you have any comments on item 6, the comments that the staff?
With that's the replacement or the putting new fence where the existing, it's an existing fence. It's in pretty bad shape. They don't want to change height, size, or anything else. They basically want to duplicate what's there and just, it'll have the same batten detail, same height, same everything.
I know from speaking with Bill Gummerson that it is a fence that matches the neighbor's fence, and I think there was some concern about if they moved it back, what the view that creates for them. Now, neither of those fences are historic, so we're not matching or replicating a historic fence. We did also talk about that ordinary maintenance and repair of an existing fence is allowed. They can paint it. They can piecemeal replace some damaged wood and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think some of that within that fence, it's part of it is double-sided in those areas, so some of it's the posts and everything else there. It's just.
But if you take down over 50%, then doesn't it have to follow the guidelines?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just.
No, and I'm not saying, that we can't go in there, and it's one of those, we kind of look at it from a standpoint of trying to make something the best it can be when we walk away from it, not changing the design, but that way it's not continually having posts rotted out and we're keeping to change them all the time. If that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen.
There would have to be a unique circumstance,
correct? I agree. I mean, it would,
Oh,
if you're
I'm
going to
with
tear
you.
the fence down.
No, I know, and I know the rules are there for a reason. I mean, it's one of those, while we were doing stuff there, it was one of those, we were trying to make it the best site we could, so.
Well, what would be a unique circumstance? If we make a motion, we have to have one. That's kind of the sticking point on this one.
I'm with you.
Is the neighbor's fence and trying to make that match up a unique circumstance with the privacy to the neighbor? No?
I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, generally what we've had to kind of say with this situation where the neighbor's fence is, you're lining up with someone else's fence that is also not in compliance is, that's an inconvenience, that's maybe not the best look, but the intention is to, over time, bring everybody into compliance. So it kind of just continues to perpetuate the issue if we keep saying, well, you don't have to meet the guidelines because the neighbor doesn't, and then when they come back in, they don't have to meet them because you didn't.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Do you have a compromise or something that we could?
I think what we'll probably do, if that's not something we can do, we'll probably just do repairs to it as we go. That's probably the best answer we have.
Okay.
You'll repair the existing fence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can probably just note that item as withdrawn.
Yeah, that's probably, and if we have to, we could always resubmit for something else later on if there's a better idea at this point, but I think probably repairs are the best way to go.
So that's withdrawing relocate the gate, that's withdrawing 5 and 6.
I think that's
It would
just
just be
withdrawing
6.
number 6, replace west fence. The gate and the items,
I couldn't find the
items 3, 4, and items 4 and 5 are on the other side of the house, and we recommended approval for those.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve HPCA 19-00063, items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, with the specific findings as noted by the staff in the staff report and the unique circumstances for items 4 and 5 in regards to the fence to screen the AC units and the relocation of the iron gate, noting that the applicant proposes to withdraw item 5.
Item 6.
Item 6, I'm sorry.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Linda Schultz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, those items have passed. So 6?
And so 6 is the one that's withdrawn.
Oh, it's withdrawn. Okay, don't have to act on it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, HPCA 19-85 at 705 Northwest 27th Street, Paseo, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Todd Harland, Castle Enterprises Incorporated for certificate of appropriateness to 5, remove paint from brick piers required. We have been able to work with the applicant on administrative approval for a couple of other items here. The last remaining one that we were not able to address administratively was the removal of the paint from the brick.
Yeah, Todd Harland, 705 Northwest 27th. We're in the midst of remodeling this house, and so it had maybe 5 or 6 layers of paint on the bricks, and we're doing something to kind of spruce up the outside, and so I thought it would add value to the house, and also I think it's historically accurate that it would have been like that. And so, yeah, we spent about $700 to have a guy that, I don't know how it's environmentally friendly, but he sandblasted the paint off and said it was with some kind of environmentally friendly sand. I have no idea what that means, but I think he did a pretty good job.
Well,
just to clarify, the thing that we can't administratively approve is specifically the sandblasting.
Sure.
We do allow for people to remove or attempt to remove paint from painted brick, but the guidelines don't support sandblasting because of the harm that can do to the brick and to the mortar. So that's why that's in front of the commission. I realize this is a challenging one because obviously what's done is already done. There's not much
But you're not sure the
you can do to
media.
go back and change that, but.
You're not sure what the media was. It could have been something besides sand?
I was going to say, this isn't something I was trying to go around the rule book on. I talked with Ms. Friddle, and it was kind of like a whoopsie-daisy moment. I didn't know that y'all wouldn't approve that, so, hindsight, 2020, so. But yeah, I've gotten compliments from the neighbors, and I don't see any damage to the facade. We did put a paint stripper on it, which I think made it come off a little easier. But anyway, I'm kind of at y'all's mercy, whatever you.
Well, what's done is done. Any comments on this?
Katie, what would you propose we do?
Slap his hand.
So, well, Rita and I were talking a little about it and whether there's some way for us to kind of deny the application for this, but sort of make a note in the file that there's not really any, or deny it or close it as an item that was not approved, but that doesn't generate forward action because there's not really any way to mitigate the work that's been done at this point. Rita, would you like to make that motion?
Never heard of this before.
Well, clarify a little about what that would look like, because we don't typically do that.
So the idea is that normally you have, when a property is before you, a history of things that have been considered by the commission. Some show that they've been approved, some show that they've been denied. What we talked about was a notation that this application was made, but it was not approved or denied. It would have the same impact as an application that was withdrawn in that sense, because you would not have taken action on it. So a person, let's say it was a subsequent owner, would not be able to say, oh, see, the commission agreed to this. Or
Wouldn't
even,
set a precedent that way.
Right. Somebody else who saw this action would not be able to say, the commission reviewed this and said it was fine, so now I want you to approve mine and say that it's also fine.
Well, is there something you, sorry.
What do you call that?
Is there something you can do to, because the staff report alludes to making sure that the sandblasting, are there processes? I mean, what were you referring to that the owner could do to make sure that the brick is stable, or?
Well, I mean, the commission could
can we mortar it, or?
Could ask the applicant to further research exactly what product was used to do the sandblasting, what the pressure was used to do the sandblasting. The commission could ask for more information about the condition of the mortar and whether or not any repointing is needed to ensure that it is stable. So those are all pieces of information that you might request. I suppose another option would be a denial with findings, kind of directing findings, or a comment to be forwarded to code enforcement saying no additional work is required. Because typically when we deny something that's already been done, that's been a notice of violation, we are denying that and suggesting that they need to come back and fix something. They need to put the window back, or they need to move the fence or make some other kind of change. But in this instance, there wouldn't really be any additional work that we would be directing them to do.
Because there's quite a bit of work. You've already done quite a bit of work on this house, haven't you? There's some that are not in this one, but in the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Right, yeah.
So are you still working on it now?
Yeah, we've been spending a lot of time on the, just kind of the exterior painting and whatnot, and inside, painting and that sort of thing.
So there's a CA to cover all this work?
Yes. Yep. We've done a separate administrative approval for some other items.
Well, personally, I would like to see some effort made to mitigate the effects, if it's possible. I mean, and
How
I'm
would you
okay
do
with...
that? Mitigate? What do you mean?
I mean,
Well, I
right,
don't
I mean,
know.
like you could put it,
I don't
maybe
know.
with the
I'm not a
sealer.
brick-
I mean, the whole purpose is that the brick has been
Damaged?
damaged.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe. We don't know that.
Right.
So
We don't know what the media was. It could have been something that's beads or something.
I mean, we could just leave it as any further action needs to be approved by the commission. So if you came up with an idea, or somebody in the future did.
And that's what the notation to that address file would reflect. This discussion, any recommendations that all of you had, so that a subsequent applicant and a subsequent commission would have benefit of that and not see it as something that you approved.
Can we deny it with the same attachment?
If you denied it, there might be a code consequence, code enforcement consequence.
what does that mean?
I'm glad it created such a challenge.
Well, it's unusual.
It's very unusual, but that would be the...
Basically what Katie said a minute ago.
Like Catherine's got an idea.
Well, one thought, I mean, we could, what's done is done. We could continue the item. It might give the applicant time to contact the contractor that did the sandblasting and see if you can get a little more information about exactly what was done. And we could also work with code enforcement staff on what the next steps are if this is denied, but there's no additional action required of the applicant. But open to thoughts from...
Catherine Montgomery, Preservation and Design Studio. I was going to suggest that I could prepare a report. I could examine the brick and prepare a report that reports on the condition left as a result of sandblasting, and if there is any further recommendation, like, for example, if the weathering surface of the brick has been damaged, recommend a clear coat matte sealer that would help to protect that weathering surface. I think that when we deny something and leave it open as a code enforcement issue, it just stays attached to the property and it just becomes a mess. So if there is a way that you can get toward an approval by maybe us submitting a report on the owner's behalf, and then you could approve it with the suggested mitigation, perhaps, if that's necessary.
You're offering this pro bono?
We might come to a mutual agreement.
I think we have to have the owner's agreement to this, but I like...
Maybe he can come paint my house or something.
I think that the commission could continue it probably to September 4th so that there's time, and ask the applicant to further evaluate the condition of the brick, and you can use whoever you want. You've had a nice offer there.
Right.
To further evaluate the condition of the brick and report back on that, and at the same time we can talk staff and work with code enforcement to see what the best option is for kind of tracking this through our system.
Yeah, I appreciate you all working with me here. Let's say the worst case scenario is, they say yes, there's some of the brick has been tattered or whatever. It seems like the most that would be asked, if I'm reading this right, is to put some kind of sealer on it, right? Could I just put a sealer on and do this, like apply to like a certificate of appropriateness and get that administratively approved?
I think what we're...
Go ahead and put a sealer on it? Or?
I think what we're asking is a little more information and professional opinion, perhaps, either from the person that did it, so it's clear. But we wouldn't want to just say, go get, there's a million different kinds of sealers. So, that might be where you're ahead if you work with a professional that they could tell you. And the other would be, on one of them, it doesn't look like it did any damage. On one of them, it looks like the mortar was softer than the technique, and therefore it damaged the mortar. So maybe there's some repointing that needs to be done too. So perhaps if you had a report, you could make better go forward.
Okay. I have a mason I use every now and then. Would a mason's, just a report from a mason work, a bricklayer? Or or, I mean, I don't mind using her,
On the
I
condition
don't know
of
what
the
her
mortar?
price is, so.
On the condition of the mortar?
Or the condition of the brick, and, I mean, you just want to,
Right, I mean, if you had somebody that they've used things in the past, perhaps.
yeah, he's very experienced, that's kind of what he does, but,
Yeah, I think.
Products have specifications too, that can be submitted, so, if it was a brand name, they're going to have, a spec sheet that says this product is
Okay.
supposed to be used in the following manner.
so I could supply, like, this, what he used in the sandblasting, the pressure he used, and then also a third party's report, like a mason's report saying, yeah, the brick looks good or bad, and I'd recommend this or that. That would work.
Well, I mean, there would have to be, I think there would have to be support for his opinion in that, in terms of he's done it before, or
Right.
or something about the product, or what mortar. I mean, it would have to be something that says this will preserve these columns in the present condition, or over time, just like they would have if he hadn't sandblasted it.
Right.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, that's where we're going with this. How do we know the columns are going to be protected now that they've been sandblasted, which is not allowed because it destroys the brick. So that's kind of where.
I got you.
Okay.
You could perhaps forward some of the Park Service discussions on brick so that maybe there's some information out there, so maybe if you read that prior to contacting somebody, you'd know better where you were trying to go, because there's a lot of information in regards to sandblasting and its effects and so forth. I think if you work with staff, you can work something out if we go ahead and continue.
Okay, so continue?
Yes. I would make a motion to continue Hpca 19-00085 to the September 4th meeting. Give you plenty of time.
Second.
In the meantime, you can work with staff.
Okay.
Okay. Seconded by Linda. Okay, been moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Linda Schultz. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, been continued. Thank you. Next.
HPCA 1989 at 704 Northwest 26th Street, Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Tim Turner, Turner & Son Homes for Warren and Nicole Altobello for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct dwelling elective, and 2, install related paving elective.
Okay.
I'm Tim Turner, Turner & Son Homes for 4334 Northwest Expressway.
Okay. Then you would, sign it. All right. Okay. New house. Any comments from anybody?
I have a question, because this is one of our biggest challenges, is working with new construction in historic areas. So could you describe how the design came about, maybe how you picked the lot, and why you feel like this house would fit into the neighborhood?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm representing my clients, Warren and Nicole Altobello, that they own the property, so we built it for them as a custom. And I think, and I'll have them jump in anytime I go astray, but their intent was to have a modern bungalow, which is what the design was conceived after. And I think there's maybe renderings in there, 3D renderings, to give it, a modern take on the historic feel of the neighborhood with that bungalow style that's in that neighborhood, particularly on that block. So that's the thought process. And I think that, I don't know, overall I think that the design concept is compatible. I understand there's some staff findings here that...
Are you the designer?
So to speak. It's a team effort. We basically started with an inspiration.
And what was that? I would like to... What was your inspiration?
I don't know if we have... Yeah, please. You're going to have to sign it. Is it in the packet?
So Warren Altabello, 700 Northwest 26th Street. So the inspiration came from after a year of just looking at different houses, different architectural styles. There should be a picture in the very back of the packet of the actual, what inspired us to go with this model home. Hopefully it's right there.
And that's an actual house or a photograph you found? Or?
No, it's an actual house that an architect built, and I think in California somewhere. But
The White House with the...
no, that's...
Is it this one?
Here it is.
This one?
No, that's...
This one?
Yeah, it's this
Alan?
one. That's what...
That one.
That's the modern bungalow.
What page is that? Yeah.
27.
27?
Yes.
27.
So when I started looking for design ideas, I looked at craftsman, I looked at traditional, and I looked at bungalows, because that's what's primarily in the Paseo district. So when I came across this one, I said it was a modern bungalow. So okay, I kind of like that. In our design, you'll see, if you look at that picture, it has a flat roof that goes all the way around it. We took that out of our design to be more compatible with the district from a roofing standpoint. We also changed the front windows, where you'll see there's the large single over the three little ones. That's now just one single, right?
Yes.
So we made some changes off of this to try to better fit the neighborhood.
Right.
But that's where the inspiration for the home came from.
Okay. And from your information that you gave, I thought maybe that's where it came from. And so anyway, like I said, this was, to me, it's always a real challenge. So do you feel like that after you found your inspiration, did you go back to the guidelines and feel like that you were, totally understood what we have to use to approve your proposed design?
I think, I will say this, in the guidelines, there's obviously quite a bit of leeway. So I think our intent was to, represent the shapes that are, prevalent in the neighborhood with, a modern take on it. In other words, as Warren said, the front porch cover, using, in fact, I think that's mentioned in the staff report, the exposed beams and brackets and that sort of thing, to mimic that same style. And again, the height of the structure very closely matches the neyborhood, fits into the neighborhood.
So that would be another, a lot of times people that are presenting, they actually draw the houses on either side with this facade so that we have the opportunity to kind of see how that's going to fit on the street. So that might be.
We have that on page 13 of 44. He did not draw the other houses in detail, but there is a height comparison.
Where? Okay.
Can I speak? My name is Nicole Altabello, and I was president of our neighborhood association when we became a historical landmark. Now, and my husband helped write the guidelines when we got help from Grapevine, and we've lived here since 1995. Now, on our street, actually, that's our house right now, the one that's right there. And we're just building in the lot next door to us, which we had bought with the house, kind of. We have a Cape Cod across the street is my mom's house, and it is a stucco. Across the street from next door to her is kind of above below. Next door to that neighbor is a farmhouse. So we have several different kinds of houses on our street, and also down the street too. So, but ours is the only Cape Cod. It was 95 when we moved into it. So just so you know, And because some people don't, you come here and you think, we're moving into the neighborhood. We've been here for a long time. So we kind of know what the area is like. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
A few things, just in general, the attached garage in the rear is not something that is, is that spelled out in the guidelines, detached garage for new construction?
Well, it's in the guidelines that, it should match the neighborhood, and if you, all of the houses in that
Does it specifically mention
street.
detached
The
garage?
guidelines say, I'm going to find the actual language for you. It does say that that the typical condition is a detached garage, and that, you find it.
And while she's looking for that, the other thing is you show the which way is up on here? The west wall of the house on the property line.
Correct.
And that's not allowed. Oh, well, you can do it, but you can't have any windows.
Okay.
So what do you plan to do? It doesn't fit your elevations.
That's a good question. Our original intent there was, the original zoning does allow for a zero lot, provided you're 10 feet from the nearest structure, which there, I think, on that side, they're 27 feet, according to the survey.
Probably the plat, but the building, the building code won't let you have windows in a elevation that's closer than 3 feet.
Right.
So you're on it, so you can't have any windows.
Right, so we will have to address that either with a design modification or shifting the house over.
Well, yeah, and of course the side is pretty tight because you're
Right.
having to go around the back to get into this attached garage
Right.
and turn around, which I wonder if there's enough clearance to actually turn around. So that brings in question the width of the house, which is 40 feet.
Mm-hmm.
In a drive, that's pretty much your whole lot.
Right, it is,
So-
it does take up the whole lot. I mean, I think one of the considerations that we would ask about is there is an alley in the back. The zoning department told me that we had to have an approach on the street side, but we would actually prefer to approach the garage from the alley.
Is that true? You can't use the
I don't know
alley
if-
for your...
I get a little conflicting information when
Yeah, do you know who you talked to?
I don't.
Not
I
to
could
rat
look-
anybody out, but I would want to follow up and find out where that was coming
I
from.
could probably, I probably have it in my notes, and I could probably look it up and send that to you, but I don't know off the top of my head. Right, the Altabellas would prefer to come in off the alley, so that was kind of the original preference.
It's a functional alley.
Yep.
Not just some...
They're technically kind of closed, except for with the county. What I understand, there's some kind of deal. But our neighbors that are right behind this Cape Cod that we live in now, they use the alley for approach. Now, neighbors in the back of us, behind the lot, have kind of closed it off because people go back and through there,
Well, lots of times they abandon the alleys and they...
Right. But we can, but what I understand, if we can go through the back alley, we'd rather do that. We'd rather pave that. It's going to be just as much concrete.
Well, if they
And-
abandoned the alley and gave half of it to each property owner, you'd have to get permission from the other property owners to go across their property. It's a question if the alley, is the alley abandoned or not? That's the
Okay, well,
question.
the other property owner would be me and Warren and us again, and then I don't think, and the property owners behind us, we wouldn't have a problem getting that permission.
Well, that's something you'd have to do to be able to...
That would be fine. I mean, to get what we
I
want.
think that's the
We want to stay
case.
in the neighborhood. We want to stay in this neighborhood and...
I think that's the case.
So we want to have a one-story house kind of thing.
Right.
too.
The aerial photograph doesn't really show an alley. It shows a fence line. I don't see an alley.
I can't help it. I promise it does. Yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
and
I'm
I
sorry.
think it's something that we would have to confirm with subdivision and zoning and with plan review on what those requirements are, whether the alley's been officially closed and vacated,
Right.
or whether it's just,
Right.
overgrown and people have put their fences there, but it's technically still legally an alley.
Yeah. The survey, the last survey we had, I don't know if I actually included that survey because it didn't have anything that I could tell was relevant on it, but I do have a survey that shows that it's still active, at least on least on
Right,
their
well-
side, so I would assume the other lot shows as well.
If you can get access from the back, that kind of solves your problem. But you wouldn't have to have
Excuse me, yeah.
you could move the house over 5 feet or something,
Right.
On
Sure
the
that.
garage,
Yeah.
the guidelines say historic garages in Oklahoma City's historic districts are predominantly detached, and attached garages are not appropriate unless documentation demonstrates their previous historic existence at the property. So it's are not appropriate. Suppose that's not technically a shall, also not a should. That's kind of one for the commission to interpret, but generally we have not supported attached garages even at new construction.
Seems like I remember one that was a new house, an infill house, and they wanted to attach the garage, and we convinced them of a breezeway or some sort of, so it's a detached garage, but it was still connected somehow.
Yeah, I think it was a detached garage with a freestanding breezeway structure. So there was some cover, but it was not technically attached at either end to
Not enclosed, for
the
sure.
buildings.
Did the commission approve one last month? I had to recuse myself, but isn't there a garage as a part of the house that was approved for Heritage Hills?
Oh, that is an attached garage, you're right.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not
Good
trying
point.
to go forth. I'm just saying.
Point.
Yeah, we just did that.
Well, we did that on a corner lot where there were other garages with the same configuration to support that.
Yeah, but we did do.
I think, if I may, part of our justification for that was the fact that you can't tell from the street, from the front at all, that it's a garage, because the garage door is completely rear-facing.
That is true. It's hidden from the street somewhat.
I think to go back to what the chairman said about the windows, you've kind of got a situation there, because it would be difficult to approve a wall with no windows. And so I think that would be one thing to determine before you go forward, because if you just said, well, we'll change the design inside so we don't have any windows, then you'd be back here and we wouldn't be able to approve something without windows. So
Sounds like we need to continue it to resolve the access, at least.
Right, to figure out whether we can access from the alley.
And then you can move the house over, because we're not going to approve this without any windows.
Right, I
On the
understand.
west side. I can pretty well, speaking for myself. So,
I concur.
we continue?
Well, is it okay if I ask some questions on some of the other items that might be objectionable, if that's the right word? Just based on the staff notes, is there anything else that you feel like is?
To me, the height and proportion fits in. I don't know if I'm crazy about the style, but we've approved others. It's all our personal preference. It doesn't really matter that much. But besides that, I think in general, anybody else have comments?
Well, I think you should work with the staff on their concerns about its compatibility with the neighborhood. And for me, one of those is that it should look from the street like it belongs in the neighborhood. And that's when I kind of go back to that garage. In 1926, they really didn't attach their garages.
Right.
And it's other people's property is impacted by every decision we make on every piece of property. So I think if you just worked with them on the issues that they bring up about compatibility of design, windows, the look from the street, that's what they're going to be the most concerned about, because that is in fact following the guidelines that are set forth, and they can work through those with you so that you and the homeowner can make some other decisions that may need to be made. But this is, in my opinion, not yet in a form, it's not yet something that we can approve.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate that.
I would just add that I think sometimes it's easier for us to get closer to approving when there's more details in the details, like, just a line around a window. In historic neighborhoods, we have, we have a certain kind of trim and we have this. And so I think the more specific the drawing is, it certainly helps the commissioners, no matter what your design is. It helps us understand it because the less details, it more looks like kind of like a cartoon. And to me, I'll just say. And so when I'm trying to evaluate it, I'm like, I'm not really sure what this is going to look like when it's finished if the materials aren't spec'd. And you might ask Katie for an example that somebody's turned in just to see, because I think just those items make us feel more comfortable as to what the final look is going to be.
And to further confuse you, we're not looking for something to ape the house next door. We want to differentiate from the historic houses. So that's how do you do that? That's kind of subjective.
So I will say Tim has been really great to work with. He's been we've interacted a lot and talked a lot about the design. And at a certain point with especially with new construction, I kind of have to just say, okay, these are really going to be, design discretionary decisions, especially some of the things that I hope some of you might weigh in on a little more specifically before we continue. Things like the materials, the use of some materials that we don't typically see, like the porch material and the vertical siding, the kind of proportion of the windows. I do think maybe a wall section would help with some of those details about the trim around the windows.
I'm all, personally, I'm all for a modern interpretation or a modern design, but and that's why I'm saying to me that very little details are important to make sure that it's going to be compatible, because if it doesn't have those details, really, as a builder, one builder could take that picture and make one house, and one builder could take that picture and you'd have a completely different house. And so I like what the owner said about everything on the block is different, and I think people have it's okay to be different. It's just that like Linda says, we want it to feel good when it's finished, that it feels like it doesn't have to be replicated, but it has to feel like it belongs. That's all. And I think you all are trying to do that. So I think that you're going to have success.
I'd like to see you pull this off, because it would be interesting to see, quote, modern house.
But I'm sure it's not easy to. You don't have an easy task before you.
No, that's true, but that's not a good reason not to do something.
Yeah.
But I appreciate what you're saying about the feel. I think that's part of I guess since it's new construction, part of the difficulty is the specific nature or the vague nature of, how something feels is, I guess that's the more input I guess I could get at this. I've got this rare opportunity. The more, I guess, specific input I could get would help me maybe direct it, narrow it, so that we do get, an approval the next time. We'll bring up something that you guys
Let me ask the commissioners just your opinion on the illustration, the inspiration 27-44 page, except for maybe material, the stacked stone. Do you think that is something that would do what they're saying? I think that's their inspiration. The rest of the street?
I think it could. Personally, I think it could. I heard you say that in some instances you actually made things more, have a more simple look, so maybe that's not necessarily how I think of historic houses sometimes, because I think they're very detailed. So, and as far as materials, I'm open, and I know it's really hard, because we're trying not to design it for you, and we don't want to. But
that's why I'm trying to see if there are any reactions to it, because that's what they like.
I think that one, it looks a lot like there's another house in another neighborhood, and it looks really nice.
Fits in.
In your neighborhood, actually. It's not actually in your neighborhood, but it got built next door to it.
What's that?
The house, you have a very contemporary house on the entry to Edgemere.
Oh, yeah.
And it has a great feel. Maybe you should drive, you're
talking about Harvey and 30th?
Harvey and 30th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was not actually in the neighborhood, that lot, is that correct, or was it?
No, it's always been part of
It was-
Park.
it was
It's a vacant
approved.
lot
Okay.
for a long time.
So I think that one is a good example because it has a very,
It's kind of a neo-prairie style, but we have others in the neighborhood that are kind of a prairie style.
so I would see, I mean, it has a really, I don't know, what do you want to say? It just has a very,
Well, it's the massing of it, the height, setbacks, it's got attached garage, things like
Yes.
that, but it's connected. It's connected, but it's detached. So that's a good example of it's a larger house, but
right.
not that much larger, really.
It's been there for a long time, so you can kind of see how it's aged in the landscaping.
Yeah.
Weren't there quite a few in Edgemere Heights, too? It's a later era.
Right.
But still, they blend in nicely.
Right.
Some of the more historic, contemporary, modern houses, yeah. They've been there a while, though.
It is part of the charm, this is just my opinion, which means nothing in terms of the ordinance, but it's not that I personally object to things being different, because all the neighborhoods have bizarrely different houses, so it's not that. It's that it doesn't jump the shark. That it doesn't go so far over that it doesn't fit in the neighborhood for everybody else.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to continue this.
Okay.
So we can continue to August 7th, in which case we'd need pretty quick turnaround on getting materials back from you for inclusion in the next staff report, or September 4th.
Okay. So what's the
So
deadline for
the
that?
commission has to specify the date to which the item will be continued.
Oh. So what's the turnaround for the August 7th?
So usually,
Tuesday?
normally we say Tuesday of next week. I actually would say, because we have,
Holiday?
well, because this meeting is early in July and the August meeting is late in August, I think we could probably push it out to the following week, like July 15th. But don't tell anybody else that I said that.
Uh-oh.
What's your choice?
I'm sure no one's listening.
Read a left so you can get away with it.
Well, I think we're going to have to shoot for the August 7th.
I would make a motion to continue HBCA 19-00089 to the August 7th.
Okay. Your second?
Second.
Is that Linda or Ann? It's been moved by Joe Meacham and second by Ann Zacharitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Being continued.
Thank
As
you.
Joe said, new houses are not easy in historic neighborhoods.
Not a good reason not to do something, though.
Yeah,
Give it a shot.
Thank you. All right.
HBCA 19-92 at 907 Northwest 18th Street, Mester Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Catherine Montgomery, AIA Preservation and Design Studio, for Floyd Simon, FNA Property, LLC, for Certificate of Appropriateness to, I'm not going to read all the items, but demolished garage, construct new garage, and related paving and fencing, and then changes to basement openings and windows on the primary structure. And all of that is elected.
Did you announce your presence?
Well, I was just counting to make sure we still had a
we have
quorum for
five.
me to begin.
Yeah.
Catherine Montgomery with the Preservation and Design Studio. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Comments from anybody? Kind of a lot of things to consider.
I can kind of briefly
Summarize?
I mean, staff
Good.
recommended approval for all items except for the couple of items that address the windows and doors and vents and such at the basement and on the side of the house. We recommended continuance on those because we didn't have drawings of the windows to go in. The applicant has indicated that they are working with Wood Window Rescue to custom build windows for those openings. So that's something that that they would be able to provide, either if it was continued to provide subsequently at a meeting, or if approved, they could provide those to staff to be included in the certificate of appropriateness. Those basement ones are on the rear of the structure, and then the windows on the side appear to be non-historic windows, and they'll be replicating other historic windows that remain on the structure.
So, Katie, you couldn't administratively approve any of item 5, item 6, and item 7, and item 9, if the documentation was provided? Is there something that we have to act on specifically there?
So we can't administratively approve it, but it could be approved by the commission with the condition that additional documentation be submitted to staff, and that documentation would primarily be, actual detailed drawings of the windows to be installed.
But that they wouldn't fit the guidelines? Is that what you're saying? Is that why you can't approve them administratively?
We can't approve it because we don't actually have drawings of the windows in the packet. There's a drawing of a window that is for the proposed new garage, but we didn't have a drawing submitted for the windows to be installed in the basement, vent openings and the door and such.
But you could approve it administratively if when they were submitted to you, they met the guidelines, right?
No, we cannot administratively approve
Windows?
virtually anything having to do with windows, yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's always
okay.
review.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
We're happy to provide the drawings that staff would need in order to issue the CA.
Good.
Got something you come up with?
No, I read all of this, and I don't have any issues with any of it except the lack of documentation, which we can just simply require. But I don't know where everybody else is on the application.
I'm of the same opinion.
Mine too.
Okay, sounds like a motion's in order.
Okay, well, I will move to approve HPCA 19-00992, item 1, with the specific findings in the staff report. Item 3, construct the garage with the specific findings in the staff report. Item 2, construct the driveway, and item 4, replace the fence, and item 8, remove the back enclosure and extend the back porch with the specific findings as related in the staff report, and approve item 5, item 6, item 7, and item 9 with the specific findings in the staff report, which do include the adequate documentation must be provided before the CA is issued. Is that sufficient?
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh. Let's see.
I'll take that one.
We'll go with Taylor. Okay. It's been moved by Suzanne Broadbent and seconded by Taylor Fudge. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Approved, and
Thank you.
additional information required. Thank you. Next.
HPCA 19-94 at 112 Northwest 26th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Kenneth and Kathy Shuford for certificate of appropriateness to 2, remove porch column and portion of porch floor, elective, 5, convert back windows to French doors, elective, and 8, extend siding over previously enclosed windows, elective. Staff recommended approval of items 5 and items 8. We did recommend a continuance, I believe, on the porch column, and had some discussion with the homeowner about, whether that column was historic and or whether that had been added onto the porch and that sort of thing. So felt that needed to go to the commission for review.
You recommended denial of 3 without prejudice.
Kenneth Shuford, 112 Northwest 26th. In regards to the column, I noticed in the staff report it was like to be denied to remove that column due to that you thought that it was historic. Looking at the brick, you see it looks like it matches the others. Also in the staff report, it also said that the mortar was different, which it completely is. Which makes me tend to believe that that column was added. It's not in the same alignment with the other 3 columns. There's a twist in it. And, the brick is dilapidated. The face is coming off of it. And what we were proposing to do was to keep the 2 on the outside, the tall columns, the small column in the middle, remove that one and make the porch on that end of the house like the other end, the west end.
In full disclosure, we met and talked about this, and I was confident that I was going to administratively approve removing that column. And then as I looked at it more closely and looked at the brick, looked around a little bit at some other houses that had kind of a similar porch configuration, I just didn't feel like it was an administratively approvable item. I wanted the commission to weigh in on whether that was an original feature.
In some of those photos that were with our packet on the houses that had additional columns, if I look at those, they are all shorter than that tall column, which was added to support that addition that was put on that porch. But in most cases, I think there may be one out of all these pictures that it looks like they all have concrete porches where we have a wood porch. And those additional columns on those outsides, similar to this one, they're all shorter and would be more matching that center column.
Katie, did you actually went and looked at it?
No, I haven't looked at it in person, just looked at the photos that they submitted. And the brick looks very similar to the brick on the other columns. The mortar does look different, and I was not sure if that was because it was different or because that column perhaps was exposed with no roof over it.
Right. I agree with that.
If you would
I think I would have to go with Katie's photographs that she supplied unless you had an older photograph that showed it without.
I'm looking at page 14. I have to agree, that brick doesn't seem to match, and also the cast stone cap looks grayer than the other one.
I saw that too.
It doesn't
looks
seem
thicker, but it looks
it's not
like
thicker. The cast stone cap is gray.
Right.
The other ones are more buff.
Well, but if you look at the other picture, then 2 of them look gray and 1 of them looks
Which page?
Look on page 13.
13? It still looks gray.
Well, it looks gray, but the one in the middle now looks gray, and the other one looks buff.
They all look buff to me except for this other one. It looks newer. It just doesn't.
It does look newer.
It doesn't have the weathered appearance. So I'm not sure. And the brick looks more orange to me, but it might be because the mortar looks gray.
I mean, we know that additional door was put into that house when the prior owner was, her husband had passed and she was needing rental income, so they added the 1 door that we already have approval to take care of. and it just looks like this overhang was added, the column was
definitely.
added.
That's definitely
That
addition.
was added.
I have a few pictures here if you're willing to look at them on the mortar. This is what I would call original columns with the aggregate. And that particular column, it's just almost like a powder.
Oh, sir, you need to turn to the podium so we can get you on the tape recording.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's an old term.
It's on the tape.
Recording.
I just think removing something, we just need some kind of proof.
Proof.
I agree.
Did you look at the,
Historic photo would be good.
not, but the, what is it, the county assessors?
Yeah, county doesn't go back far enough. I mean, it's
enough.
always around the county, but that's only...
2004
Yeah.
was as far as I could
Yeah.
find on the assessor.
The Sanborn maps show a footprint for the porch that appears to match the three columns in the, I'm getting turned around on which side, but the three columns that are under the historic roof. But the Sanborn map only shows the portion that was
Right,
covered.
was covered,
So
right.
it wouldn't, if that portion was uncovered, it wouldn't have shown that
I mean,
anyway.
if not for the photographs, I would say I could kind of see it, but we still very rarely let people remove things without proof.
More information. I just say
Okay.
proof.
The previous owner, that house was in their family since it was built in 1922. Would he be qualified to say
Sure.
that in his,
Yes.
that is not original?
Yes,
And if I have an affidavit saying that,
yes,
because this house was in the family since 22.
that would be fine.
Yep.
Are we saying original or historic?
Well, we would have
He
to
needs
know
to
the
know the
date,
definition.
because if it was built, if it was part of it a long time ago, it would have, we couldn't remove it. I mean, it doesn't have to be there from day one, but,
Just find out when it was
But that
added.
would be an additional, something that was added.
right. So we just have to know all that. But it sounds like that if we continue, you could get that information and come back.
Okay. And then as far as the commission approving, to me, looking at those other photos, if those outside columns that were not covered by porch, standardly looking at them, they looked the shorter, would the commission be willing to look at lowering that column to match the one in the center?
I think we'd first like to know the history of it. And it's brought my attention, it'd be best if the gentleman could actually come to the meeting so we could ask some questions. So, instead of just an affidavit,
Okay.
if he's able to, I don't know.
Yes, he's able.
Okay, so is there a motion on this one? Just
What
continue.
about the other items?
Well, I don't know, just moving it along here. Let's see. I think staff recommended approval. I have a concern about closing in those windows, but apparently that side of the house faces the retaining wall for the expressway.
Yeah, it's 10-foot tall concrete retaining wall block, from I-35 or 235.
After we just got talking about we would not approve a house with no windows, we're taking out the windows.
There is actually another window in
There are
that.
some others, yeah. Yep.
Yep, they are located toward the rear of the house, where we do usually have some more flexibility for changes to window openings, and then additional, just the condition that, this is not a typical setup where we see the interstate highway literally feet from the windows. I mean, no one is ever going to, that's never going to be exposed. It's never going to be visible. So in this case, staff did recommend approval.
Yeah. Okay. I would make a motion for HPCA 19-00094 to approve items 5 and 8 with the specific findings as noted by the staff in the staff report and the unique circumstances associated with item 8.
Okay. Is there a second? Moved by Taylor Fudge, and moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Taylor Fudge. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so 5 and 8 are approved, and now 2?
5 and 8.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to make a motion to continue item 2.
The commission can continue it to August 7th or to September 4th.
August 7th would be fine.
Okay.
I would make a motion to continue HPCA 19-00094, item 2, to the August 4th, 7th meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, item 2 is continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing the history of the column.
I just have a quick question. Is it okay if we drive by and just kind of stop and look on our own if we want to? Just get our own.
That's a good idea.
I mean, you can just do a drive-by through that cul-de-sac, and I mean, you can look at all the other houses in the area, and you don't see anything similar to that. But like I said, in those one pictures, everything on those porches that were not covered with roof, those columns were always lower. So,
my question is also to Rita, is that okay for one commission member, not a meeting of the commission members, but
Yes, you can all go individually, but just don't go on his property without his permission, of course.
Yeah.
They've been invited. Okay.
We used to actually put maps in your packets with all of the properties marked on the maps so that you all could drive around to all the houses.
Like a treasure hunt.
Stopped. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. On to other business, none. 8, communication reports. Minister approvals, a lot.
Quite a few administrative approvals, and answer your questions if you have concerns about any of those. No withdrawals, no administrative closures. City Council did have an item on yesterday, actually City Council has had 2 items. I guess one of these didn't make it onto our agenda, so we can talk about that. On May 21st, Council adopted a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with First Christian Church and with Crossings Community Church that withdrew the Commission's application to initiate the Commission's initiation of the designation process in return for them agreeing to some protections for the church. So that was May 21st. Yesterday at Council, an item
prompted this
was introduced to amend the Commission's ordinance, making it so that when a property owner does not support a designation, only City Council can initiate that process. The Historic Preservation Commission and Planning Commission would still be able to initiate the process if the owner, or in the case of a district, a majority of the property owners supports the initiation.
They cited legal concerns primarily, right?
Yes.
On that. So
that item, what they voted on yesterday was to refer that ordinance amendment to Planning Commission. If you watched the meeting or if you saw any of the news coverage, it kind of made it sound like that was the end. But ordinance amendments to Chapter 59 have to go to Planning Commission for a recommendation, and then it will have to go through the regular ordinance amendment process of 3 council hearings before there's a final vote. So there will be additional discussion on that item.
do we know when or?
Yeah. I don't have dates yet. With it being a holiday week, so many people are out. The municipal counselor's office will have to get with Planning Commission staff to schedule that on their agenda.
Okay, let us know.
Yep, we'll keep everyone posted as those meetings get scheduled.
Okay.
Going forward.
All right. Question on that? Suzanne? Okay. Board of Adjustment.
There has been an appeal filed for Hpca 18-205.
Ah.
This was the parking cover at the corner house in Heritage Hills. The commission denied that application, and they've appealed that to Board of Adjustment. It was actually supposed to go a couple of weeks ago and was deferred to August 1st, I believe, at the applicant's request.
Okay.
So that will be heard on that date.
Okay, if Planning Commission none, Ad hoc Committee, I guess that committee's still okay, since we can still do that with approval. Yeah.
Well, right now, we can do everything that we
Yeah.
currently can do because nothing is in effect.
Oh, that's right, because, that
Yeah.
hasn't been
And,
approved yet.
you
But
know-
the original version of the amendment would have taken that away, correctly? Correct
Yes,
for
what
all?
was originally posted withdrew
Right.
any ability to initiate designation.
So I think
But-
that's a big improvement, what they've ended up on.
Yes. It was discussed in council that, obviously the HP Commission, Planning Commission retain the ability to provide recommendations to council, to identify potential landmarks, to communicate with property owners, that sort of thing. So I anticipate that work continuing, whatever happens with the
Right.
ordinance amendment.
So I think that works out well. Okay. H, Municipal Counselor, anything? Okay. Of course. Next meeting date. The next regular scheduled meeting for the Historic Preservation Commission is August 7th, 2019, at 2 p.m. at the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received July 2nd, 2019. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, July 9th, 2019. 2, the next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, September 11th, 2019, from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at 420 West Main, Suite 900. And then 9, any items for commissioners?
Well, just very quickly, maybe all of you saw this in the real estate section on June 29th, Richard Mize's article about the federal order, executive order on, it's entitled Executive Order Establishing a White House Council on Eliminating Regulatory Barriers to Affordable Housing. And it goes on down to list and this is language in the order, burdensome, unreasonable, cumbersome, all those sorts of things, including historic preservation requirements. So, we might want to keep an eye on all of that. I don't know exactly where that goes or leads us, but...
Well, I assume there's people at the national level concerned, sort of thing. So,
But along with the burdensome historic preservation ordinances comes delightful preservation tax credits. So there are two sides to these for the argument in terms of development that is really a plus,
I think most people, most of us understand that, but they've never seen a regulation that they like. So, any more items from commissioners? Any more citizens? No. So, with that, there being no further business, we are adjourned.
Great meeting. 4:10.